العلم أشراف مطلوب وطالبه لله أكرام من يمشي على قدمه. العلم نور مبين يستضيء به أهل السعادات والجهال في الظلم.
ونية شرط لسائر العمل فيها الصلاح والفساد للعمل. So المسألة الأولى, the first مسألة was obviously we're gonna mention this principle in Masail. مسألة الأولى والثانية, the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. It's easier to understand the principle if we divide it or categorize it into Masail. So the first مسألة is the sigha, the wording of it. And we talked about al-umur bil-maqasidiha and the difference between al-umur bil-maqasidiha and al-a'malu bin-niyat, and the fact that some of the scholars have used al-a'malu bin-niyat rather than using al-umur bil-maqasidiha. Then we talked about the general meaning of the principle. Then the third mas'ala was the adillah, the evidences for this principle. طيب, al-mas'alatu al-rabi'ah, shurut al-niyyah, the fourth mas'ala. So you can start writing now. The fourth mas'ala is the conditions for the niyyah. The conditions for the niyyah. So for the niyyah to be sound, there has to be, there are prerequisites, there are conditions that have to be met. Right. The first condition, الشرط الأول الإسلام. الشرط الأول الإسلام. الشرط الأول الإسلام. So for the kafir, his niyyah is not accepted. His niyyah is not accepted fil jumla. Fil jumla. And not bil jumla. Min bab al-fa'ida, what's the difference between bil jumla and fil jumla? You'll often hear the scholars mentioning these or using these wordings, these two sentences. One second. طيب, نعم. طيب, so مثلا when you hear fil jumla, yeah, fil jumla, it means in most cases. So مثلا اتفق العلماء على هذه القاعدة. The scholars have a consensus on this principle fil jumla, in general or in most cases. So you might find a group of scholars, however small in number they may be, disagreeing with this principle. Like, this is the mithal, it's just an example. However, if I say اتفق العلماء على هذه القاعدة, the scholars have a consensus in this قاعدة بالجملة, بالجملة, it means that the scholars are in consensus over this قاعدة, all of them, يعني. All of the scholars, without any exemption, are in consensus over this principle. So when we say now, النية أو الكافر لا تصح منه النية, the kafir, his intention is not accepted, or his intention is not correct or sound or counted, or it won't be considered fil jumla, in general or in most circumstances. Why do I say that? Because it's not bil jumla. Why is it fil jumla in most cases? Because there are some actions that can be correct from the mushrik. لكن, for example, مثلا الآن العبادات, actions of ibadah are not accepted from the mushrik. لكن there are certain things like talaq. مثلا, if he comes to our court, then his intention will be accepted. talaq. And if he says, I did not divorce her, and مثلا they come to our courts, Islamic courts, they have the same ruling as the Muslims in terms of the kinayat, or the wordings that which are clear and wordings which are not clear. Also, their transactions, the transactions that they have when they're buying and selling, their niyyah can be included or can be accepted, or if they're dealing with Muslims or if they're dealing with non-Muslims, dealing with Muslims or in their non-Muslims. مثلا, some of the examples that the scholars mention as well, if a Muslim man is married to a Kitabiyya, if a Muslim man is married to a woman from Ahlul Kitab, then her ghusl is to be considered, is taken into consideration. The ghusl that she makes from hayd is taken into consideration and is sahih. Why? Because obviously before the man can have intercourse with her, she needs to perform ghusl, and that ghusl is taken into consideration. So ala kulli hal, the kafir's intention is not accepted when it comes to ibadat. When it comes to ibadat. Right. So the first condition for intention, or for having the correct intention, is al-Islam. The second condition is al-aql. Al-aql, the person has to be sane. The person has to be mentally fit. As for the insane person, then their ibadah cannot be accepted, their salah won't be accepted, their mu'amalat won't be accepted, all of their tasarrufat, all of their dealings won't be accepted, or they're not correct. They're not correct and they're not sound. طيب. الشرط الثالث, the third condition, is at-tamyiz, maturity. And there's a difference between maturity and puberty. Maturity is the child who can be 7, 8, or 6 years old, that understands the khitab. He's been addressed, he understands what is being said to him, and he can reply back with a khitab, with a reasonable expression, or reasonable kalam, or statements, or speech. So there's a difference between maturity and puberty. Can we say mental maturity? That's what it comes down. Na'am. Well, it is mental maturity. Na'am. It is mental maturity. Whether you say maturity or mental maturity, then na'am. Tamyiz, when you're talking about tamyiz, na'am, the say mental maturity might be slightly closer. Na'am. Naam, so Baba Nabil Jazahullah Khair says this is the difference. This is different to biological maturity. So Baba Nabil Hafidahullah said, can we say mental maturity? And can we use tamyiz for mental maturity? This is different to biological maturity. Like when you're talking in English, na'am, mental maturity can be tamyiz and biological maturity can be puberty. Like in al-bulugh in Arabic, al-bulugh is when a child reaches puberty. Like in at-tamyiz is different. At-tamyiz is different. Na'am. So ala kulli hal, mental maturity, or the person reaching maturity, age of maturity, is a condition for their action to be accepted, a condition for their ibadah to be accepted, except for Hajj and Umrah, except for Hajj and Umrah. And the evidence for that is the hadith of Abdullah ibn Abbas, in which he said, radiyallahu anhu, that a woman picked up a child in front of the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and she said, "Alihada hajjun, alihada hajjun." قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم, "نعم ولك أجر." Na'am, there is Hajj for him, and laka ajr, yani you will be rewarded as well. You will be rewarded. So the scholars say, even if he's literally, if the baby is just born, if a baby is just born and then they're taken to Hajj, then their Hajj is accepted. Meaning their Hajj, they will be rewarded for it. Bear in mind that Hajj is not enough for the Hajjatul Islam. They still need to perform Hajj after reaching puberty, after bulugh. So even if a child performs Hajj or Umrah after, at 10 years old or 11 years old, 12 years old, before puberty, then when they do reach puberty, they still need to perform Hajj. Hajjatul Islam. And that shows the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because for the child, the qalam of reward, the qalam or the pen of rewards is taken into consideration, and the child shall be rewarded for every action that he does. However, the qalam of taklif, the pen of responsibility, doesn't start until a person reaches puberty. Right. So that's the third. The fourth condition for the niyyah is al-ilmu bil-manwi, that the person has to have, he has to know or have knowledge of the manwi, the fi'l that he intends to do. The fi'l that he intends to do. Now, whether it's sunnah, whether it's wajib, now, whether it's a ibadah or whether it's not a ibadah. فمثلا, dhuhr and asr, they're the same. What differentiates between them? The niyyah. مثلا, if a person is traveling and they're doing qasr or they're combining the salahs, when they're combining dhuhr and asr, the surah or the way they would perform them is exactly the same. Like, in the difference is the niyyah. So they have to have knowledge of exactly what it is that they are performing. Knowledge of what it is that they're performing. So, مثلا, if a person stands up for salah, or if they're traveling and then they say Allahu Akbar, like, and they don't have the intention, whether it's asr, whether it's dhuhr, or whether it's the sunnah before it, or whether it's tahiyatul masjid, then their niyyah is not correct. Their niyyah is not correct. Right. So that's the fourth mas'ala. The fifth mas'ala, the fifth mas'ala is Qawaa'id al-niyyah, benefits of the niyyah. Benefits of the niyyah. What are the fawaid of the niyyah that the fuqaha talk about? The first fa'idah when it comes to the niyyah is tamyizul ibadat ba'diha an ba'd. Tamyizul ibadat ba'diha an ba'd. Differentiating between the ibadat, or differentiating between different types of ibadat. Like we just mentioned in the last example, dhuhr and asr. When you look at them, the way a person would pray dhuhr and asr is exactly the same. Like, what is the difference? The difference is that you have the intention to separate this ibadah of dhuhr from the ibadah of salatul asr. Likewise, مثلا, if a person is praying tahiyatul masjid, they have the intention to separate tahiyatul masjid from sunnatul fajr, or the ratiba, the sunnah that are performed before the salawat or after the salawat. Likewise, difference between duha, or differentiation between salatul duha and tahiyatul masjid, if they come into a masjid or if they go into a masjid at the time of duha, or the sunnahs for performing wudu and the sunnah for salatul duha, mathalan. As for combining, we'll talk about it at the third benefit, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. So the first one is differentiating, or the first benefit of the niyyah is you're able to differentiate between different types of ibadat. Mathalan, al-ghusl al-jum'ah and ghusl janaba. Two ibadahs. Like, and what is the difference between the two? The intention that the person has. So mathalan, al-an, if a person wakes up and they're on janaba, like, and they completely forget they're on janaba, like, and they have the intention for ghusl yawm al-jum'ah, then their intention is only for jum'ah. They will still need to make ghusl for janaba, because it is a different ibadah. It is a different ibadah, and the nafila, the sunnah, cannot go into, or the wajib act cannot go into the sunnah act. Right. The second benefit is tamyizul ibadat anil adat. Tamyizul ibadat anil adat. Tamyiz al-ibadat an al-adat. So, مثلا, if a person is having, مثلا, if it's extremely hot and the person wants to have a shower to cool down, like, at the same time it's Friday morning, like, at the same time, or they need to perform ghusl for janaba. So they need to perform ghusl from janaba, and at the same time it is extremely hot. So they're going to the swimming pool, or they're going to the shower with the intention of cooling down. Then they come out of the shower and they think, you know, I needed to make ghusl. I'll make that ghusl janaba. لا تصح. It won't be correct. Their intention for that ghusl is not correct because they had the intention of cooling down and not the intention of ibadah. So the cooling down is a adah, whereas ghusl from janaba is a ibadah. Likewise, fasting. If a person مثلا is on a diet, they won't be eating food and they're not going to eat food for the whole day, or they're going to avoid eating for 2 days. And another person is avoiding food like in their fasting, then there's a difference between the two. One is a aada, which is on a diet, himya and so on. Lakin one is a ibadah, which is their fasting for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, lakin these adat can become ibadat. So that's why the scholars say عادات أهل العلم عبادات وعبادات أهل الغفلة عادات. So they say that عادات, the norms, the customs, the normal things that people do, the scholars do, or the students of knowledge do, or a person who has knowledge, normal things they do on a day-to-day basis become or can become ibadat, types of worship. How? Mathalan, a person is going to sleep in order to wake up early for Fajr so they can go to the masjid and they can pray. Or they are working out, or they go to the gym and they do different forms of exercise in order to get themselves prepared, or in order to be strong fi sabilillah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Or mathalan, they eat food, and this is a aada. Eating food is a aada. Like if a person eats food in order to make himself more alert and more able to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then they will be rewarded for their eating. Likewise, if they're going to sleep, they're lying down, or they go to sleep early in order to mathalan have a lot of energy for the whole night so they can pray. So they sleep during the day so they can be able to pray during the daytime. They will be rewarded for that sleep. They will be rewarded for that sleep. Now, the dalil for that is the hadith of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, وَفِي بُضْعِ أَحَدِكُمْ صَدَقَةٌ, in which the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that if one of you goes to his family, then in it there's a sadaqah. In it there is a sadaqah. And we know obviously that is a aada. Imam Nawawi rahmatullahi alayhi, on his commentary of Sahih Muslim, he mentions في هذا دليل على أن المباحات في هذا الحديث, يعني in this hadith, في هذا دليل, there's evidence in the fact that mubahat تصير طاعات, that the mubahat, the things that are mubah, permissible, تصير طاعات, they become طاعات, they become ibadah, بالنيات الصادقة, if they are associated with, or if a person comes with the correct intention, or intentions which are truthful or sincere. So that is something which is very important, which is that we should try and make our adat, the normal things that we do, turn them into ibadat, whereby we can be rewarded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Al-Fa'idatu Thalitha, the third fa'idah for the intention is al-ikhlas lillah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that a person does it for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's sake. So any ibadah that a person does, they do it sincerely for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They do it sincerely for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this type of niyyah, al-ikhlas, is normally talked about in the books of Aqidah. Normally talked about in the books of Aqidah, whereby the scholars talk about the difference between Tawheed and Riya and Shirk, and the different types of Shirk, and the fact that Riya comes under minor Shirk and so on. Okay. The fourth benefit of the niyyah is what is called tadakhul al-ibadat. Tadakhul al-ibadat. Combining different types of ibadat into one. Combining different types of ibadat into one. So, mathalan, a person can do two types of ibadat, two types of worship, and be rewarded for both of them whilst only performing one action. An example, a person wakes up, performs wudu, leaves the house, goes to the masjid, and again, there's only about 5 minutes left till Fajr. And they pray 2 sunnahs, 2 prayers, 2 rak'at faqat. They pray 2 rak'at, lakin with the intention of the sunnah for the wudu, the intention of tahiyyatul masjid, the 2 rak'at for greeting the masjid or sitting in the masjid, and the 2 sunnahs for the rawatib. So they're only performing 2 sunnahs, 2 rawatib, lakin they're getting the reward for 6 rak'at. وَذَلِكَ فَضْلُ اللَّهِ يُؤْتِيهِ مَنْ يَشَاءُ. So they're getting the reward for these 3 prayers whilst only performing 1 prayer. Why? Because of the intention. Because of the intention being combined. Lakin it is a must, and we'll see this qa'idah again in line number 44. So if you flip over to the line number 44, the Shaykh says, وَإِن تَسَاوَى الْعَمَلَانِ اجْتَمَعَا وَفُعِلَ أَحَدُهُمَا فَاسْتَمِعَا وَفُعِلَ أَحَدُهُمَا فَاسْتَمِعَا. So if 2 actions meet or are combined, then one of them is done. Then one of them is done, and they can be rewarded for that specific ibadah. طيب. Lakin, there are 2 conditions for this to be the case. There are 2 conditions for this to be the case. So, مثلا الآن, combining the ghusl of janaba with yawm al-jum'ah. If مثلا a person wakes up yawm al-jum'ah on janaba and needing the ghusl for jum'ah, a person can combine the 2 with 1 ghusl. So they won't need to have ghusl for janaba, get out the bathroom, dry themselves, and go back into the bathroom for the ghusl of yawm al-jum'ah. La. 1 ghusl is enough. طيب. Lakin, they must have the intention. طيب. Likewise, مثلا, نعم, we mentioned tahiyyatul masjid as well. طيب. Also, tawaf. Hajj, you'll see, inshallah, when we're studying Kitab al-Hajj, you'll see that there's tawaf al-wada', and then there's tawaf al-ifada. Tawaf al-ifada is the pillar and the main tawaf for a person who's performing Hajj. Then we have tawaf al-wada', which is performed when a person is leaving Mecca. So it's called the farewell tawaf. Circulating around the Kaaba, it is called the farewell tawaf. Right. So if a person delays the tawaf al-ifada, the main tawaf, the pillar, they can combine it with tawaf al-wada'. They can combine it with tawaf al-wada'. Right. Lakin, there are conditions here. There are 2 conditions. For a person to combine different types of ibadat into one and get rewarded for all, there are 2 conditions. The first condition is that the ibadah must be the same. The ibadah itself must be the same. So the first condition is that ibadah itself must be the same. So an example is ghusl jum'ah and ghusl janaba. They're both ghusl, going into the shower, going to the bath, and washing yourself with water. Tahiyyatul masjid and the sunnah of before Fajr, or the sunnah of wudu. All 3 of them are 2 rak'at. So it is the same sort of ibadah. Tawaf, مثلا tawaf al-ifada and tawaf al-wada'. They're both tawaf where you go around the Kaaba 7 times. Right, so it's the same ibadah. However, you can't say, I'm going to combine salah and fasting. I'm going to combine salah and fasting. Why? Because these 2 ibadat are now different. These 2 ibadat are now different. So you can't say I'm combining siyam and fasting. Siyam and salah. Nor can you say I'm going to combine hajj or tawaf of the Kaaba with salah. Right. That's understood, inshallah. The second condition, or before we go to the second condition, can we say we're going to combine Salatul Dhuhr? So you've understood the first condition, which is the ibadah must be the same. The way you would perform the ibadah must be the same. Right. Can we say we're going to perform Dhuhr and Asr with 1 intention? Dhuhr and Asr with 1 intention. Or, مثلا, the 6 days of Shawwal, if a person misses a few days of Ramadan, and they also want to fast Shawwal, can they say, I'm going to combine the two, of the making up of Ramadan and the fasting of Shawwal? I'm going to combine the two. Can a person say that? Can we do so? No. Why not? Why can't we do so? We said in the first condition,
because one is Sunnah and one is
which is طيب, okay, what about Dhuhr and Asr? The example of Dhuhr and Asr. Dhuhr and Asr.
if he's not a traveler, it's hard to pray at one time. He said if he's not a traveler, it's hard to pray at one time.
It's harder to pray?
At his time.
Right. What about if we're traveling? Mathalan, we're traveling now, we're going to Umrah, and then we're praying Asr and Dhuhr together at the same time.
There's an evidence for it.
Which is? No, I'm talking about, can we combine the two?
Oh.
Mathalan, الآن Asr and Dhuhr. They're 2 rak'at. If we're traveling, we pray 2 rak'at, we shorten. But we also combine. Can we combine the two with one intention? So we only pray 2 rak'at with the intention of Dhuhr and Asr. Remember the first condition, we said what? What was the first condition?
Differentiating between the ibadah.
No. The first condition is that the ibadah must be the same. I'm talking about the condition for combining different ibadat.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah. The ibadah.
Now, they need to be 2 separate intentions. Lakin, the answer is the second condition that I'm about to mention, which is that one of these ibadat, or when combining, they cannot be maqsooda bidhatiha. These ibadat cannot be intended and specifically legislated for a specific reason. Or they cannot be maqsood, that there's not a reason for them being legislated. So Dhuhr and Asr, they're both maqsooda. There's an intention between, specific intention between the Dhuhr, for Dhuhr and Asr. So Allah Jalla wa Ala legislated both, and they're from the 5 daily prayers. Likewise, and the fasting of Ramadan, sahih, so one of the students said it is wajib, lakin it is also maqsooda. There's an intent behind Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala legislating specifically Siyam of Ramadan. And likewise, the fasting of Shawwal, it is maqsooda itself. There's a reason for it to be prayed, or there's a specific reason for it to be fasted on a specific time. And that reason is that the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, whoever fasts Ramadan and then follows it up with 6 from Shawwal, he will be rewarded كَانَ كَصِيَامِ الدَّهْرِ, as if he has fasted the whole year. Right. So 2 intentions, 2 ibadat that are on the same level, but not in terms of hukum, wajib and so on, like they're both maqsooda. They're both intended. Right. Why did we say you can combine the ghusl of Jum'ah and the ghusl and janaba, ghusl janaba? Because the intention is what? Or what is the maqsood? What is the objective? What is the objective of ghusl yawm al-Jum'ah and ghusl of janaba? And nadafa, al-tahara. Al-tahara is. طيب. Likewise, one of the students said, Salatul Istikhara and the other Sunnah prayers. No, you can't combine them. Because Salatul Istikhara there's objective in itself. It has a reason. It has a specific reason. Now, مثلا, the other examples we mentioned, Tawaf al-Wada' and Tawaf al-Ifada. Tawaf al-Ifada is the pillar. It is maqsood bidhati. Lakin, Tawaf al-Ifada, Tawaf al-Wada', the farewell Tawaf, why has it been legislated? It has been legislated so that the last thing you do in Makkah is Tawaf. Now, if you combine Tawaf al-Ifada with Tawaf al-Wada', technically the last thing you will do in Makkah is Tawaf. Right. Ala kulli hal, inshallah, with this principle, we'll go back to it, or we'll come to it in line number 44. Like, for those of you that studied the first principle, the first time round, the beginner's level, go back to your explanation, inshallah, you should find mazid on, or more of a clarification on when we studied line number 44. الفائدة الخامسة. The sixth benefit is في ألفاظ المكلف, is the wordings of the mukallaf, the wordings of the Muslim, the wordings of the mukallaf, the person that is that has the burden of responsibility, the mukallaf, in terms of differentiating between the different wordings they use. So مثلا الآن there are words that are not clear cut. مثلا طلاق. If a man says to his wife, أنت طالق, I have divorced you, that is صريح, it is clear. So it doesn't need, we can't say, or we're not going to say, we look into his intention, did you intend to divorce her or not? Why? Because the wording that he used is clear. Right. Lakin if he says, مثلا, go and stay, or go back to your family's house, go back to your family home, or go and join your family. Go and join your family, or go to your family house, or leave my house, or you're no longer permitted to come back into my house. That's not clear-cut divorce. It can be a divorce, or it can be a way of rebuking her and making hijrah of her and so on. Lakin it is not a clear-cut divorce. Therefore, if a person says these words to his wife, what is looked at is the intention. So it is said to him, did you intend to divorce her or not? If he says, no, I did not intend to divorce her, then there is no divorce. If he says, lakin, I intended to divorce her, then again it goes back to being, if he says I intended to divorce, then it goes to be a divorce. Right. The next mas'ala, I think is number 6 or 7, محل النية. Where does the niyyah take place? محل النية القلب. The heart is where the niyyah takes place. The heart is where the niyyah takes place. So it's not permissible for a person to say, rather it's a bid'ah for a person to say, إن نويت أن أصلي أربعا كذا وكذا وكذا. I intend to pray 4 rak'at salat al-dhuhr in this masjid and so on. It is not permissible. It is not permissible. Rather, it is a bid'ah. Right. It is a bid'ah. Lakin, we know that when a person is going umrah or hajj, they say labbaik Allahumma umratan, or labbaik umratan wa hajjan. What's the difference between saying out labbaik Allahumma umratan, and so obviously it is wajib for you to say labbaik Allahumma hajjan or labbaik Allahumma umratan, Allahumma labbaik umratan or hajjan. Like, it is wajib to say that, or Allah, I am performing hajj, or Allah, I am performing umrah, and so on. What's the difference between that? So that's permissible, but rather it's wajib. And then again, we're saying it's not permissible to say nawaitu an usalli arba'an, I intend to pray 4 rak'at. What is the difference between the two? So for salah, for fasting, we're saying it's not permissible to say أنوي أن أصوم يوم رمضان كذا وكذا, or أنوي أن أصلي أربعا كذا, I intend to. What's his difference? So one of the students says it is ibadat, that's tawqifi to say labbaik Allah. طيب, جيد. طيب, it is tawqifi, صح. The other wasn't done by the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam or the Sahaba. So it's true, it wasn't done. What is the difference? That is one of the differences. The difference is for the salah, or when you're before, so for salah, it's not permissible. Like even for hajj, you're not specifying, you're not saying your niyyah. You're saying the type of hajj that you're performing. Labbaik Allahumma tamattu'an, or Allahumma labbaik umratan. The type of nusuk, the type of ibadah that you're doing is the one that you're saying out. Lakin you're not saying I'm intending to perform hajj. Lakin it is, you're differentiating between the manwi, the action that you're intending to do. But lakin you're not specifying your niyyah. So you're pronouncing the manwi, the ibadah that you want to perform. Lakin not the fact that the niyyah you have is to perform Hajj. So there's a difference. طيب. The next masala.